The great halls of the Velari Imperial Palace glowed with golden light. The marble floors stretched endlessly, reflecting the shining lamps that floated in the air like tiny suns. It was the day of celebration, a day that would mark the beginning of a new bond between two worlds, Earth and the mighty Velari Empire. Princess Aelira stood tall in the center of the hall, her long silver hair flowing behind her like a river of starlight. Her people admired her not only for her beauty but for her intelligence and strong will. Today, however, her heart felt heavy. She was about to marry a man she hardly knew, a human named Ethan Cole. Humans to the Velari were considered weak. They had only recently stepped into interstellar politics, and compared to the great alien empires, Earth seemed small, fragile, and inexperienced. Yet humans had shown unusual courage during first contact, and somehow, their persistence and strange creativity had caught the attention of the Galactic Council. For political reasons, the Velari agreed to this marriage alliance. When Ethan walked into the hall, many alien nobles whispered among themselves. He wore a simple ceremonial suit designed in the Velari style, but his human features stood out. Brown hair, sharp eyes, and a calm expression, he looked almost too ordinary to be standing among beings of such power and elegance. "Is this the human?" one of the nobles muttered. "Yes," another replied, "a frail creature from a young world. He looks harmless enough. What could he possibly bring to our empire?" Aelira heard the whispers and felt a mixture of embarrassment and irritation. She had accepted her duty as princess, but she could not deny her doubts. Could this human truly stand beside her? Or was he simply a tool for diplomacy? The ceremony continued with the exchange of vows. Ethan's voice was steady as he promised to honor and protect his new wife. Aelira spoke her vows as well, her voice echoing across the vast chamber. Applause followed and the union was sealed. The feast began shortly after. Tables stretched across the hall filled with food from many worlds, fruits that glowed faintly, meats that shimmered with spices, and drinks that sparkled like liquid stars. Music filled the air and dancers moved gracefully. Ethan sat beside Aelira, quiet but observant. He noticed the way many nobles watched him with thin smiles, their eyes filled with doubt or even mockery. Instead of looking uncomfortable, he simply smiled back at them. His calmness made Aelira raise an eyebrow. "You do not seem troubled," she said softly, leaning closer. "Should I be?" Ethan asked. Most men would feel pressure under so many judging eyes. He chuckled lightly. "Where I come from, people judge each other all the time. It doesn't bother me anymore." Aelira studied him for a moment. His words were simple, but there was a quiet strength behind them. Later in the evening, a group of envoys from the rival Zirathi Dominion approached. The Zirathi were tall, lizard-like beings with scaled armor covering their bodies. They bowed to Aelira but ignored Ethan at first, as if he were not worth acknowledgement. Finally, one of them sneered. "So this is the human? The one chosen to be your consort? I expected more." The words were loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. The hall grew quieter. Some of the nobles smirked, waiting to see how Ethan would respond. Ethan calmly placed his cup on the table and looked directly at the envoy. His voice was calm yet sharp. "On Earth we have a saying, do not underestimate a seed because it is small. One day it may grow into a forest. You see me as weak because you do not understand me. That is fine. But if you think weakness is the same as insignificance, then you may be making a mistake." The envoy blinked, caught off guard by the human's confidence. A few nobles chuckled softly, impressed by the unexpected answer. The Zirathi envoy stiffened, muttered a few words of apology, and stepped back. Aelira found herself watching Ethan with new eyes. He had not raised his voice, yet his words had silenced the entire hall. He had not shown anger, only composure. It was rare, even among her own people. After the feast ended, Aelira and Ethan walked together through the palace gardens. The twin moons of Valar hung in the sky, casting silver light over the trees and glowing flowers. "You handled yourself well," Aelira admitted. "I expected you to stay quiet, perhaps even hide behind me. Instead, you spoke with strength." Ethan smiled faintly. "I'm used to people underestimating me. Sometimes the best way to deal with it is not to fight, but to remind them that they might be wrong." Aelira tilted her head. "You are strange, human. You act humble, yet your words carry pride." "Maybe both can exist at the same time," Ethan replied. They walked in silence for a while. Elira realized that despite her doubts, there was something intriguing about this man. He did not try to impress her with grand gestures, nor did he complain about being treated as lesser. Instead, he carried himself with quiet dignity. That night, as Elira returned to her chambers, she thought about the moment in the hall. She had seen countless warriors, diplomats, and rulers, but few had ever silenced a room with nothing but words. Her human husband might appear ordinary, but there was something hidden beneath the surface, something she could not yet define. The whispers of the court continued in the days that followed. Many nobles mocked the marriage, calling it a mistake. Yet Elira noticed subtle changes. Guards who had once ignored Ethan now gave him respectful nods. Servants whispered about his calmness. A few officers even asked him questions about strategy when studying maps. One evening, Elira entered the library and found Ethan reading star charts. His eyes followed the lines carefully, as if he had studied them many times before. "You read our military maps?" she asked. Ethan looked up. "Just curious. Your empire has impressive fleets, but your formation against the Drazorian war clans looks vulnerable here." He pointed to a section of the chart. Elira blinked. "You understand strategy?" "Not formally," Ethan admitted. "But I've studied Earth's history. We fought wars for thousands of years, often with limited resources. Sometimes creativity mattered more than strength." Elira was silent for a long moment. She realized then that Ethan was not as simple as he appeared. Humans, though small in the galactic stage, carried something unique, the ability to see what others overlooked. That night, Elira whispered to herself, "Perhaps my husband is not ordinary after all." The palace was quiet, but the air carried unease. Princess Elira walked through the long corridors, her thoughts heavy. Her marriage to Ethan had brought endless whispers from the nobles, yet she could not deny the small respect he had earned during the feast. His calm words, his silent strength, it all stayed in her mind. Still, the galaxy outside was not calm. Rumors of danger reached the Empire's borders, and soon those rumors became truth. The Drexorian war clans had moved. Known across the stars as ruthless conquerors, the Drexorians were feared by every empire. They had no interest in diplomacy or peace. They lived only for battle and domination. Their fleets burned entire colonies, and their warriors considered mercy a weakness. News arrived one morning when Elira was in council with her generals. A messenger rushed into the chamber, his armor dented, his breathing uneven. "My princess," he cried, bowing quickly. "The Drexorian fleets have crossed the border. They strike at outposts in the east sector. Our defenses are breaking." The council chamber erupted in voices. Some shouted for immediate retaliation. Others demanded caution. Elira raised her hand, silencing them. She turned to her generals, her voice steady. "Mobilize the defense fleets. Protect the border worlds. No Velari citizen must be abandoned." The generals bowed, but she could see the fear in their eyes. The Drexorians were no ordinary foe. Ethan, who had been standing silently near the back of the chamber, stepped forward. His presence was unusual in such councils, but Elira had allowed him to attend. He looked at the star charts projected before them, his eyes moving carefully across the glowing lines. "You're sending too many ships to the east sector?" Ethan said calmly. The generals turned to him, their expressions sharp with offense. One of them scoffed. "The human dares to speak of strategy? You insult our experience," but Ethan continued undisturbed. "If you commit too much there, you'll leave your central routes exposed. The Drexorians don't just attack head-on. They like to strike in waves, pulling their enemies apart. If they cut through your central routes, they can split your fleets and surround you." The generals laughed. "Human history is primitive. Do not compare it to interstellar war." But Elira did not laugh. She remembered the maps she had once seen Ethan studying in the library. His warning had weight. She looked at him closely. "And what would you suggest, husband?" Ethan pointed to a smaller route near the border. "Set a trap. Keep your main fleet hidden. Let the Drexorians think they're breaking through easily. When they push forward, cut off their supply line. Starve their advance. Then strike when they're overextended." Silence filled the chamber. The generals frowned, unwilling to accept advice from a human, but Elira saw something in Ethan's eyes, a certainty that came from experience. "We will consider this," she said firmly. Her tone silenced further protest. Days later, the first Drexorian strike came. Elira stood on the command bridge of her flagship, the Star of Valar, watching as fleets clashed in the endless dark. Explosions lit the void like storms. The Drexorians advanced with brutal force, tearing through outposts and pushing deep into Velari space. The generals followed their original plans at first, but as Ethan predicted, the enemy soon shifted. Instead of pressing forward blindly, the Drexorians split their forces, slipping into weaker routes and threatening to divide the Empire's defenses. Panic filled the command channels. "They're flanking us!" shouted one officer. "We'll be cut apart." Elira's heart raced. She turned to Ethan, who stood quietly at her side, his eyes fixed on the holographic battle. "This is what you warned us of," she whispered. Ethan nodded. "If you give the order now, we can still turn this around." She hesitated. The lives of thousands rested on her decision. But she remembered the calm strength he had shown before, the way he had silenced the hall with only words. She trusted him. "Signal the fleets," Elira commanded. "Pull back from the east sector. Set the trap." The generals were shocked but obeyed. Slowly the fleets retreated, luring the Drexorians deeper. Believing they had broken the Velari lines, the Worklins pushed forward eagerly. That was when the hidden fleet struck. From the shadow of a nearby moon, Velari warships surged forward, cutting across the enemy's supply routes. The Drexorian ships, separated and overextended, suddenly found themselves surrounded. The battle turned. Explosions filled the void as Drexorian cruisers fell one after another. For the first time in years, the Worklins were forced to retreat. Cheers erupted across the command channels. Officers shouted in triumph. The fleet had been saved. On the bridge, Elira turned to Ethan. Her silver eyes studied him carefully. "You saw this before it happened." "How?" Ethan gave a small smile. "I've read about wars. On Earth, history is filled with battles where the smaller force survived by using the enemy's pride against them." I just recognized the pattern. Elira felt a chill. This man, this human husband she had once doubted, had just saved her people from disaster, and yet he spoke of it so simply as if it were nothing. That evening, Elira confronted him in the quiet of their chambers. The stars glowed outside the wide windows, filling the room with silver light. "You must tell me the truth," she said firmly. "Who are you really, Ethan Cole?" "No ordinary human carries such knowledge, such calm. You speak as though you have lived 100 battles." Ethan looked at her for a long moment. His face was unreadable. Then he shook his head lightly. "I promised you that I would protect you. That is enough." Her frustration grew. "Do you not understand? You saved an empire today, yet you hide behind simple words. Why?" Ethan's eyes softened. He stepped closer. "Because power attracts attention. And attention brings danger, not just to me, but to you. I would rather remain underestimated if it means I can protect you better." Elira's heart raced. She had spent her life surrounded by warriors and leaders who sought glory. Yet here was a man who avoided it even when he had earned it. For the first time, she felt something beyond duty toward him. An unfamiliar warmth in her chest, she whispered. Almost to herself, "You are not weak, Ethan. You are something else entirely." But peace did not last long. Weeks later, the Drexorian fleets returned, larger than before. This time they launched a full-scale invasion, burning through border defenses and driving straight toward the heart of the Empire. The earlier battle had only been a test. Now the true storm had begun. The Empire trembled. Citizens fled to the core worlds. Nobles argued in endless circles, some demanding surrender, others calling for desperate attacks. Elira tried to keep control, but even she could see the fear spreading. One night, as she sat in the War Council, Ethan entered quietly. His presence once again drew sharp stares from the generals, but Elira gestured for him to speak. "They won't stop," Ethan said. "The Drexorians won't settle for small victories. They want to break you completely." Elira nodded. "I know, but what choice do we have? Our fleets cannot hold forever." Ethan's eyes grew sharper. "Then it's time I stop holding back." The words hung in the air like thunder. Elira's breath caught. For weeks she had sensed it. His hidden strength, his unspoken truth. Now finally he admitted it. "What do you mean?" she whispered. Ethan's gaze locked onto hers. "I've kept secrets. For your sake and for mine. But if your empire falls, those secrets won't matter. The time will come soon, Elira, when I'll have to show you what I really am." And so the Empire prepared for war once more. The Drexorian fleets drew closer each day, their shadow spreading across the stars. Elira stood beside her human husband, her heart filled with both fear and hope. She no longer saw him as ordinary. She no longer doubted his worth. Instead, she wondered in awe and perhaps a little dread. What hidden power this human carried inside him. For soon the galaxy would learn the truth. The skies above Valar Prime burned red as warning sirens filled the capital. From the palace towers, Princess Aelira could see the enemy fleet like a swarm of black shadows blotting out the stars. The Drexorian warclans had come in full force. This time, their ships stretching across space like a wall of death. Panic spread across the empire. Citizens fled into shelters. Nobles argued endlessly in the council halls. Generals prepared their fleets, but even they admitted the truth. The Drexorians were too many, too strong, too relentless. Aelira stood on the balcony of the war chamber, her hands gripping the railing tightly. She had faced many challenges in her life, but never had she felt so close to despair. Her empire trembled and even her own heart began to waver. Behind her, Ethan Cole stepped quietly onto the balcony. Her human husband did not wear royal robes or armor. He stood in simple clothes, his expression calm, his brown eyes steady. "You're afraid?" he said softly. Aelira turned to him sharply. "Of course I am afraid. My people are on the edge of ruin. Even our strongest fleets will be crushed. Do you not understand the danger?" "I understand," Ethan replied. He stepped closer, his voice calm but firm. "But fear won't save us. Action will." She narrowed her eyes. "Action? What action could you possibly mean? You're only human. You've been wise, yes, clever with strategy. But even you must see this is beyond tricks and words." For a moment, silence hung between them. Then Ethan exhaled slowly. "Aelira, do you trust me?" Her heart tightened. She remembered every moment. The feast where he silenced the mocking envoy. The battle where his strategies saved their fleets. The way he had stood beside her with quiet dignity. She nodded. "Yes. Against all logic, I do." Ethan's gaze hardened. "Then I'll show you what I've kept hidden." That night, deep beneath the palace, Ethan led Aelira into an ancient chamber he had discovered when he first arrived. Its walls were made of strange alloys, filled with old technology left behind by an earlier age. "What is this place?" Aelira whispered. Ethan touched the control panel. Lights flickered on, revealing rows of glowing crystals and metallic structures humming with energy. "This was built by humans long before your empire ever knew us. A secret project. Its name was Project Helios." Aelira's breath caught. "Impossible. Humanity is young in the stars. How could they build something like this?" Ethan's face was grim. "Because most of humanity never knew. Helios was hidden. A program to create protectors. Humans fused with quantum energy, able to bend the laws of physics themselves. I was one of the last." She stared at him, her heart pounding. You are not just a man." "No," Ethan admitted. "I am more, and I promise to protect you. That is why I have hidden this. Power is dangerous. If others knew, they would fear me or try to use me. But now, with your people on the edge of destruction, I can't hide anymore." Aelira stepped closer, her voice trembling. "And if this destroys you?" He smiled faintly. "Then I'll go down fighting, as a human should." The next day, as the Drexorian fleets closed in, Ethan stood on the command deck of the Star of Valar. Aelira stood beside him, her generals watching with doubt and confusion. "Why is he here?" One whispered. "This is no place for a human." But Aelira silenced them with a single glance. Ethan raised his hand. The chamber filled with a strange light, golden and radiant. Energy flowed from his body, rippling across the air like waves of sunlight. The soldiers gasped as their systems lit up, their failing shields surging with sudden strength. What is this?" an officer cried. "Hope," Ethan said quietly. He stepped forward. His eyes glowed faintly now, his form surrounded by a shimmering aura. When the Drexorian warships fired, their beams bent away, deflected by invisible fields of energy. Ethan raised his hand again, and lances of pure light burst outward, tearing through enemy cruisers with precision no weapon could match. The Drexorian commanders roared in fury, ordering their fleets to press harder. But the more they struck, the more Ethan pushed back. His energy spread across the battlefield, guiding Velari ships, strengthening their shields, even disabling enemy weapons with bursts of light. Elira watched in astonishment. The man she had once doubted, the husband she had married only for duty, now stood as the savior of her empire. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice trembling, "you are incredible." The battle raged on for hours. Ethan fought like a living star, his power bending physics itself. The Drexorians, who had never known fear, began to falter. Their fleets broke apart under the storm of light. On the command deck, Elira's generals bowed their heads in awe. "The human, he fights like a god." But Ethan's face was pale, sweat covering his brow. Each surge of power drained him, each strike burned his body from within. Elira saw it, her heart twisting with fear. "You cannot keep this up," she cried. "You'll destroy yourself." He turned to her, his smile faint but resolute. "If it means saving you, saving your people, it's worth it." Her eyes filled with tears, but she did not argue. She stood by him, her hand resting on his arm, silently giving him strength. Finally, as the last Drexorian flagship fell, the battlefield grew quiet. What had seemed an unstoppable storm was now broken wreckage drifting through the void. The Warclans, humiliated and shattered, retreated into the dark. The Empire was saved. The palace halls filled with celebration. Citizens cheered in the streets. Nobles who had once mocked Ethan now bowed in reverence. The story spread across the galaxy, of the human who unleashed the light of stars, of the Empire saved by a man once thought ordinary. But while others celebrated, Elira remained at Ethan's side. He lay in the palace chamber, his body weak from the power he had unleashed. She held his hand, her silver eyes soft with emotion. "You risked everything," she whispered. "Not just for the Empire, but for me." Ethan's voice was faint but steady. "I promised to protect you, and I keep my promises." She leaned closer, her heart overflowing with feelings she could no longer deny. "I thought I was marrying a man for duty, but I see now. I married a protector, a warrior, a hero. You are not ordinary, Ethan Cole. You are extraordinary." His hand tightened slightly around hers. "I'm just human." Elira smiled through her tears. "Then humanity is far greater than the galaxy ever believed." In the days that followed, everything changed. The Drexorians, once feared across the stars, now whispered of the human of light. The Velari nobles, once scornful of Earth, now sent envoys begging for alliances with humanity. And for Elira, the galaxy itself seemed brighter. She no longer saw her husband as a stranger forced upon her, but as the partner she had never known she needed. Together they had forged not only peace but something deeper, trust, respect, and a bond that no empire could break. As the twin moons rose above the palace one night, Elira stood with Ethan in the gardens where they had first spoken. She looked at him with wonder still in her heart. "You changed everything," she said softly. "No," Ethan replied. "We changed everything. Together." And in that moment, beneath the silver light of the moons, the alien princess and her human husband stood not as strangers of two worlds, but as partners who had proven a truth the galaxy would never forget. Humanity was not weak. Humanity was special.